podcast from Peach 2020, hosted by Peter Martin.
Hello, I'm Peter Martin, founder of Peach 2020, and today I'm delighted to welcome you to a special edition of our Top Table podcast series to mark International Women's Day. There will be many companies celebrating their female team members and colleagues today, and rightly so. But the question remains, what has really changed on the equality front in the past 40 years or so? The balance of frontline leadership at general manager level in our pubs and restaurants has undeniably altered. But too many boardrooms still look like bastions of the old boys network, or some would argue. Unfair? I can hear the protests now, but the dial may have moved, but how fast and how far? Across business as a whole, despite being 50% of the workforce, women make up just 24% of board positions. A mere 6% make it to chair or chairwoman, and 5% to CEO. The diversity problem is now widely acknowledged, as we saw at last year's Peach 2020 conference. The mood music is changing. Our leaders in hospitality businesses are much more alive to the need for boardrooms to reflect the world and their customer base. So that means 50% of directors being women is not unreasonable, I would argue. But as the numbers show, there's still much to be done. Should there be more interventions? How can we accelerate change and bring board level representation in our sector up to par and pronto? One such intervention has been staged already, led by 3 highly successful senior women in the sector who, frustrated by the lack of progress, 5 years ago decided to launch the Plan B mentoring program with a bold and simple mission: to create greater diversity on boards. Holly Addison, Emma Causer and Ann Elliott, and with the support and encouragement of Kate Nichols at UK Hospitality, set out to provide women in management and leadership positions with mentoring, advice and motivation from objective mentors to achieve their ambitions. In the first year, they recruited over 150 board-level mentors from across the industry and have now arranged a host of mentoring events. So to learn more about the impact they have made, as well as the size of the challenge that still remains, let's meet Holly, Emma and Anne. Welcome to Top Table. So, with this being International Women's Day, what is the scale of the challenge we still face in hospitality in particular, Anne?
Well, I think, as you've just said, when only 24% of board positions in the industry are held by women, we've still got some way to go, to be honest. Whether we'll ever get to 50, who knows? But there's still a role to play. And it's not just a statement. It's not just something we want to do for the sake of it. I think everybody knows that balanced boards perform better than unbalanced boards. So there's a real commercial imperative to have more women on boards in executive positions, not just in non-executive positions.
Yeah, but I suppose it's a matter of getting a sense of the scale of the movement already. So how much has the dial moved since Plan B was launched?
Well, it's interesting. I was just looking at some figures this morning. I mean, that moved to 24%. I mean, in 2017, it was about 15%. So there was some considerable movement just in that time. So you'd like to think that we could aim for 35, 40%. And just in the time we've been going, which is 5 years, we have seen a significant change, and we've seen a number of our mentees go on to board appointments, which has been really, really pleasing for us all.
So, I mean, I suppose the first question is actually, got a follow-up question on that is, that's the scale of the issue and where you've gone. But why Plan B? Why that name?
Well, I can take that one because I think that was my
Holly,
suggestion.
yeah.
But we started we started Plan B really because I think the 3 of us were all passionate about doing something that was actually going to make a difference and going to be able to, where we could see tangible improvements. We were all involved in different reports and studies around the state of the issue, but I think we really wanted to hit on something that would really make a difference and be able to make tangible improvements. Simply, Plan B we chose as a name because Plan A wasn't working.
Simple as that, yeah.
And we thought there had to be a better way. And in terms of mentoring, we'd all had exposure to mentoring schemes. Emma had actually set up a mentoring scheme previously. I'm sure she'll talk a bit about that. And Kate Nichols knew all of us individually, and I think knew of our passions and our shared interests, and connected the three of us. And we hit on mentoring really because I think that every senior woman that I've certainly encountered at some stage or another has always referenced whether an informal or formal mentor who's helped them break through their own, perhaps perceived barriers, or help them raise their head above the parapet and be bold and be braver and achieve things that they may otherwise have not. So we chose mentoring as the platform.
And you all come from slightly different backgrounds within the industry as well. I'd probably a bit talking about that and what experience you brought to that. Because Holly, your background is much more on the recruitment side of the market. It still is. So, did you bring any particular sort of perspectives from what you've seen there?
Absolutely. And it was very much about women not always having the confidence to put themselves forward for roles that they perhaps perceived to be not completely in their comfort zone. And again, back to the point about where mentors have played a part, it was really empowering and enabling them to be bold, to be brave, to embrace a challenge that perhaps they hadn't thought that they were able to do. And increasingly I was seeing that senior candidates for roles, if they were women, were just as likely to say to me, "Oh, I'm not sure I can do this," or "I don't fully fit this criteria." Where perhaps men may not be quite so self-critical.
And Emma
had that experience.
And I mean, Emma, from your point of view, your background is probably more involved on the supply side of the market. I mean, are the experiences very similar there? Because, I mean, our sense is this is not just a hospitality issue. This is a much broader issue.
I think it's a massively broad issue. And, where I worked previously on the supply side, there were the same challenges. And now I've moved into the built environment and it's exactly the same. And I was actually on a global call the other day, and the challenges are global as well. Yeah. So this is it's not just a UK specific or a sector specific challenge. I think this is something that everybody's experiencing, and we've all got to affect change to make it better.
Yeah. And I'm picking up from yours, because, you've come originally from an operational side, worked in marketing and PR in the sector. I mean, do you recognise the fact that, have we seen more change probably at more junior levels as people come up? And is there now an obstacle to get people, women into that next higher level?
I think the representation at GM level is probably more than 50-50. I think then when you get to a BDM level, it falls off a bit. And then when you get to ops director, it's even less. By the time you get to a board level, it's, as we know, it's 24-25%. So as you go up the pyramid, it definitely gets less. And that's through all sorts of reasons. Some of it is unconscious bias, all male boards not realising the benefit of having women on board. Some of it is women ourselves and what we can do to help others, which is our role, to get others onto boards with them. So there are all sorts of reasons, I think, why women haven't got onto boards, but that doesn't mean they can't get onto boards.
Yeah, and are there any specific issues about hospitality? Because we've got an issue in terms of recruitment and image for the market at the moment, particularly around long hours, unsocial hours in terms of working weekends. Is that more of a problem by women than it is for men in the sector?
I think it is an issue for women in the sector, but I've seen, particularly with the work I've done in the last, even just 2 or 3 months, the impact of the pandemic on working policies within businesses in our sector.
Yeah.
And HRDs have been extremely innovative and very hardworking in trying to change a working environment which benefits everybody, whether it's single parents, whether it's older people, whether it's in a prisoner, whether it's the homeless. They've really done their best to try and improve diversity across the whole of their workforce. And I think that's going to come through in board levels as well.
Because, that was probably my next question in terms of talking about how the last 2 years have affected momentum for what you've been doing? Because I mean, and you're saying that attitudes have changed because of the pandemic, but in terms of, you know, Plan B itself, Holly, I mean, how have you had to adapt to the working changes we've all experienced these last 2 years?
Yeah, it's a good question. I think it's taken us into a new dimension, actually. I think when we first went into lockdown and into the pandemic, we realised that obviously we wouldn't be able to do the speed mentoring events that have really been a key part of Plan B in person, and that was a great shame. And so we thought about how we could move it virtually. And we've been running sessions monthly, all the way through, actually, via Zoom. And they've worked incredibly well. We've had to adapt the format. We've invited less mentees and mentors onto each session because it can be quite intense in this environment. You don't have sort of natural breaks and the socializing element to it. And I think what's interesting as we've come out of it, we've now realised that we want to keep very much both the virtual and the physical events. So obviously we want to get back to physical events, and we've got some great events coming up. But I think there's a real benefit to being in a virtual environment. It takes away the geographical barriers. We've been able to be more global. And I think there's been a sort of intimacy in the Zoom speed mentoring sessions. We've also done webinars. So we've been able to evolve the model, but I think now we've got a good balance of physical and virtual events going forward.
So in terms of going forward, I mean, how much that are you going to keep, and how much are you going to develop in other areas, Emma?
So I think we definitely want to. I think we're going to just take stock soon. We're just about to finish our first tranche of sessions for this quarter. Then I think we need to take stock, because obviously the world's turned and it's changed. And what we want to do is we need to evolve as well. In the same way we evolved at the beginning of the pandemic, we now need to change it going forward. So we want to look at still doing the virtual sessions, but then also doing some face-to-face sessions and making them bigger, and hopefully getting a wider reach. And we've always kind of focused on, senior women, but actually do we need to do something for like women in junior roles as well? So I think it's about developing a plan that we can implement going forward that will encompass both areas and hopefully support. Our aim is to support more women.
Yeah. I mean, if you go back to where you started, I mean, what was the impact on the industry, the fact that you three and others, because I know you brought a lot more people with you, but you three are the driving force. I mean, what was the impact? What was the attitude you got from the industry, particularly as senior male figures in the industry?
It was incredibly supportive, wasn't it?
Yeah, I think. I mean, we had the BT Tower event, and that's what we had a limit, and we actually filled it and then some, didn't we, Anne? And that was phenomenal. We just didn't expect that, and I think everybody was just so supportive. Nobody pushed back.
Yeah.
No, we haven't had any pushback. And you talk about the male leaders. I mean, Rob Pitcher, Revolution, particularly supported us. He's given us free venues, free food, free drink, which, we do this on a voluntary basis. So that's been fantastic. But also the support of mentors. We've had some absolutely brilliant male mentors. And they look at the male CEOs and the male MDs who've encouraged their female executives, senior managers to take part in this. They haven't been shy of encouraging women to come forward and say, try mentoring, try something that's outside of our business. And our mentors have been absolutely superb. And it's just unlike anything else that there is out there. So, there's almost, why wouldn't you, isn't there?
Yeah.
And I think actually what's happened as well is quite often they'll come up and go, oh, by the way, now I've got 50% females on my board now, and they'll come up and they'll actually tell us, so that it's clearly a focus for them.
Yeah. I mean, so what makes a good mentor? Do you mentor the mentors, as it were, to actually make sure they can go do a good job? Because in a sense, not a lot of people have actually necessarily had that experience.
I would say we have some truly exceptional mentors, and I think it's like anything. Being a mentor is a real skill, and it's about listening and empathy and understanding. Anne looks after all the mentors, and she has a conversation with them all, and we're very careful about who we bring in, because we want them to add something to the journey of our mentees. So we send out details of what's expected, and we select them on the basis that they have empathy, listening skills, and that they're passionate about supporting us as well. And I think that's a really big thing, is that they want to be part of it.
I think what that is represented by is, when we do our sessions and we say to the mentors, put your mentors' favourites in order. Who would you like to work with best? They come back and go, well, all of them. But if you force me to choose, then I'll have these people. But the mentors are so great that it's very hard to differentiate between them. It comes down to a matter of chemistry at the end of the day, doesn't it?
Yeah,
absolutely. I think one of the things, going back to what makes a great mentor, one of the things that we shared recently on LinkedIn was, a mentor is not someone who walks ahead of you to show you how they did it. A mentor walks alongside you to show you what you can do. And I think that's what, is at the heart of a lot of the mentors. It's sharing their own experiences, but it's encouraging and empowering, the mentees to really realise, what they can do and to take those bold decisions. But, to what Emma and Anna said, we've been so grateful for the support of so many CEOs and chairs, not only mentoring themselves, but also encouraging others within their organisations, senior leaders, to be mentors as well and sign up.
What we have is a fantastic set of cheerleaders for the industry. I think that's probably the best way to describe it, is that they're there kind of supporting and cheering the women on.
So are you attracting even more mentors then? So you're keeping that momentum going. So they sort of, have you had any mentees actually becoming mentors, if I can get my tongue around that one?
Yes. No, we really have.
We've had lots of examples of that, where they've moved from being, and that's actually, that's something that we'd really love to focus on in the future, as people move on their journey. And we always have this hashtag at the beginning, which was lift as you climb, and we want to make sure that everybody's paying forward and moving it forward. And I think we've had some great successes with, somebody came along to a founder session we did, and he's now the chairman of her company, because he was so impressed with her product that he was like, the best way I can support this is really help an advisor by being her chair.
Yeah.
We never have any problem getting mentors, Peter. I think people just say yes, and the only reason they say I can't do it is because they're already mentoring 3 or 4 people, or they don't have the time, or they've got a new role. But nobody ever comes to us and goes, no, thank you. That's just not me. They really want to do it. And we've almost got a waiting list of mentors as well as mentees ready for the balance of the year.
So how many people have you got involved overall at the moment? Let's get a scale of the of Plan B as it stands now in terms of mentors and mentees.
So I totted up the numbers this morning. I did a final count of how many mentees that Kate have come through. Anne hasn't heard this number, actually. We've had 500 mentees in the 5 years since we've been going. And actually we ran less sessions pre-pandemic. And actually the pandemic's enabled us to do smaller sessions, but more regularly. So the figure is at 500. And I think we have a bank of probably 250 to 300 mentors, and that's something that's just grown over time, and probably will continue to grow. And actually it's starting to grow into other sectors as well, which is one of the things that we're finding.
So certainly that side, you're seeing that progress coming through. But what does success look like in terms of moving the dial? Are you satisfied with the way things are going, or could they go faster?
Oh, I think they could go faster, because we just know the commercial reality is there, that mixed boards work better than non-mixed boards. So why wouldn't you want to have more women on your boards, and not just in NED roles, but in executive roles as well? So I don't think we've got a figure in our minds of saying we won't stop until we get to 50-50. But there's lots and lots of opportunities for those brilliant women out there to get onto boards and make a contribution. And we want to encourage those women to take on mentors, look outside and really be inspired, because the biggest issue for most of these women is imposter syndrome, is believing they can't do it. Well, actually, a mentor is there to convince you can do it. And as Holly said, be by your side and see you get there.
And what about the obstacles still? Because you've talked a lot about the people who get it and the encouragement you've got and the enthusiasm and people signing up to become mentors. But presumably there's still some issues out there and companies, no names, who are still not moving in that. I mean, are you able now to really identify the big issues? Is it about culture? Is it about bias within those companies?
Sorry, Holles, you go.
I think no, I think unquestionably things are improving. I think they're improving daily. I think the awareness now that everybody has that this isn't just the right thing to do, but it's got to be the right direction of travel. And there's I think people increasingly, companies and boards are recognizing the huge benefits that come from the diversity of thought and the diversity of lived experience around a leadership team. So I think that battle is to a large extent done. Where I think it still falls over is in certain pockets of sectors of industry, key functions on boards. I mean, if you think about the finance function, if you think about the tech function particularly, they're very, very poorly represented in terms of women by comparison to qualified men. And sometimes it's about looking at the criteria that you are putting into a job or position or a role in terms of things like previous experience. So there's an element of looking at the potential and the competence and the skills that somebody could bring, not just the fact that they've done the same role somewhere else for 20 years for a competitor. Because if that's one of your criteria, that's always going to hinder gender balance in any of those particular roles where there is just far fewer women that have that experience to bring to the table. And I think that is getting better, but it's about companies being bold enough to take that decision and look more closely at potential and skills and competence rather than previous experience.
I know some firms have started to look at blind CVs to remove that element of bias and really start to challenge and moving away from just looking at a CV with a name. And I think if you make them blind CVs, it creates a different environment.
Yeah, because
I think ultimately, if we could get to a position where there's a level playing field to start with, every recruitment decision or appointment is going to be fairer. I recently had a scenario where I had two candidates as finalist candidates for a board level position. Both, one was male, one was female. Both were equally qualified. Both were equally experienced. But the company in question didn't have any executive directors on their board. They only had non-executive directors, and they had 4 male executive directors. So they chose the woman. Had there been a 50-50 split on that board already, arguably it would have been a fairer decision, but we have to right that balance to make it a level playing field going forward.
Yeah, I mean, obviously the focus of Plan B, certainly from the start, was to encourage women, bring them along. But how much work still needs to be done, as it were, in terms of mentoring those male bosses who still haven't got it, as you've been describing, and to some extent? I mean, how much do you need to feed back to those people to actually change their attitudes, or is it just the success of Plan B will ultimately, you hope, change their thinking?
I think they have to. Or you can't educate people like who are really, really stuck in their ways. I think they've got to have the experience of having women around them on their boards and see what difference they make and how their boards operate differently and the commercial results they get. And that will convince them, or see other people. You look at some of the businesses that have made huge changes, huge strides in diversity over the last few years. and the difference that's making to their performance. And that's the sort of thing that convinces the shyer, more reluctant ones to have a more balanced board.
I mean, is it the case that it's sort of the flat Earth syndrome that that in the end they'll die out? And in fact, is it the younger generation who are more in tune with what you're talking about?
I think there's safety and security. That these who we're talking about, they like to recruit people that look like them. They're not going to be challenged, and it feels quite secure. And I think that attitude, quite frankly, is becoming it's a kind of a dinosaur attitude almost. And I think especially customers are going to be much more demanding, and they're much more cognizant of the whole kind of ESG concept as well. And they do look at how boards are made up, and they do look at how companies act. And I think people have to be much more cognizant of that. And I think customers are more cognizant of that, and they will potentially vote with their feet in the future. So I think they have to be more aware of how they are presented or represented on their boards as well.
I mean, do you get any kickback occasionally from companies saying, "Oh, well, we've done enough now. We've got enough women on boards"? I mean, I did. I mean, we didn't say too much about it, but the last Peach 2020, we actually had more female speakers than we had male. But there was one comment, it may have been tongue in cheek, to actually say we'd gone too far, and luckily that was anonymous because. But you do get that sometimes. Do you feel that?
Yeah, I unfortunately I think there is an element of that. I mean, a couple of people have made comments to me, "Oh, well, isn't the female agenda done?" Well, no, frankly, it isn't, because until we get to the point where, it is 50-50 in all levels of leadership, where there's a balance that is representative of the population, of the working population in all function and all levels, there's still going to be work to be done. And we're righting the wrongs and I suppose the lack of understanding and the lack of awareness of many years gone by. So it's not going to change overnight. I think the encouraging thing is that generally the mindset is that people are wanting to move in this direction. They want to get to a position where, we won't need to talk about gender anymore, because it will just be a balance and it will be parity. And then we can start talking about other dimensions of diversity and really, bringing in the intersectionality. But I think they don't always know how. And I think sometimes there's a little bit of a desire, I suppose, to go with the safe bet, which is somebody who's done the role for many years in a similar company, because that's seen as the safer option. But it's not. It's been proven many times over. That's very rarely.
And we have been challenged, Hol, haven't we? Why haven't we got a male mentoring program? Why aren't you supporting men? And our answer to that is that currently, men do very well without that support already. And it's not that they don't need supporting, because I think everybody deserves support, but the system and the framework and the structure of the working environment is set up for men to succeed currently. And all we're just trying to do is just to address that balance.
So, I mean, in terms of looking at the industry now, I mean, it is still male dominated, but it is moving. I mean, who would you guys pick out as sort of trailblazers, people who have done it well, and what you can learn from them?
I think some of the big companies have done really well, actually. I think if you look at Green King and what Nick McKenzie's done there over the last few years has been truly mesmerising in lots of ways. He really has changed that company. I think M&B particularly do very well with their female leadership. Stonegate have got women leaders on their executive board. I think TRG, similarly, they've got women running their businesses. So some of the big guys are really, really leading the way. I suspect that in some instances it might be the smaller to mid-sized ones that have more of an issue. If you've only got 3 or 4 on your board, putting a woman on might seem more risky than if you've got 10 on the board. But I think there's some fantastic examples of the big businesses really trying to make a difference, and not just only with women, but with diversity as a whole as well. So there's some great examples of people to follow if they want to look for them.
I mean, you make the point there about diversity as a whole, because gender is where is only part of that. And I think, as we saw again at Peach 2020, you just picked out Nick McKenzie, and what they've done. That whole program on diversity is really impressive, whether it's around ethnicity or disability. And Holly, we did some work on disability a few years back as well. Are you working with those sort of groups as well to actually, and what can you learn from them? And is there some mutual support with those guys as well?
Absolutely, and I think that's a sort of watch this space, because with our 5-year anniversary coming up in October, we've got some exciting plans around exactly that, and extending, what we do, bringing in that intersectionality and looking at those other dimensions and ensuring that we're bringing that into what we're doing. I'm still lucky enough to sit on the Business Leaders Group for Disability Confident in the UK, and I think accessibility is such a key part of every business agenda at the moment, and rightly so. You mentioned ethnicity. We've got some great partners that have offered their help and support in terms of helping us embrace that community more. LGBTQ plus. We've got lots of plans in that sense, and we're actively working with other organisations that share our sort of values to make it fully inclusive.
So, in terms of leaders, whether they're men or women listening to this, or aspiring managers coming up, I mean, what can they do to get involved with you guys?
So we have our website, and that's all set up, and they can register on the website, and that comes through. And we're always looking. We've always worked by word of mouth. That has been the way that we've grown. So they can register on there, and then Anne, Holly, and I are all on LinkedIn. Can all be reached out to, and we're always happy to have a chat. It's our grand passion, so we're always happy to discuss it with anybody, and any ideas or plans that they would like, or even we're starting to look as we go forward. We are very aware we want to get bigger, so we need to look at support, kind of sponsorship for the future. So we're also starting to embrace that and contemplate that for the future.
Well, obviously, International Women's Day is essentially about celebrating the success of women in all sorts of fields, whether it's cultural, whether it's business, whether it's politics. So, you three, how are you going to be celebrating the rest of International Women's Day?
So I'll go first, because it's my birthday, so I shall. So number one, it's my birthday. I think then I'm hosting an event for women in the built environment all day, and then we're also doing our very own Plan B session in the evening from 5 o'clock. And Green King have very kindly provided a venue, which is the Glass Blower, and we will be there from 5 o'clock onwards. And we want to give something back to the mentors and say thank you for all their help and support, because quite simply we could not do this without them. They have helped us make this what it is, and it's only with their kind of passion, their expertise, their skills, their knowledge that we can do this.
Good. Well, thank you for the invitation for that as well, because I know that's come through, and I will be seeing you a little later on today at that. And thank you for your inspiration as well. One last question, though. I mean, another year on, we've had 2 very difficult years. I mean, what's gonna please you about the progress you make in the next 12 months? What are you looking for?
I think for me, it's just getting more mentees and through, I wouldn't call it the programme, but the more mentees that can join us and be part of the programme and have great mentors, then the more, in lots of ways, the more the merrier. Those women who really want to get onto boards, really want to move themselves forward, to have a great waiting list of those would be fantastic for us.
Well, Anne.
Well, I think one of the themes from International Women's Day is forging those inclusive work cultures. And I think that's always been central to, we don't want to just create diverse or help create more diverse boards for the sake of it. It is about making sure that those boards will then create more inclusive cultures. And that's where women's careers can thrive and their achievements can be celebrated. So I think with our 5-year anniversary coming up, we want to plan something quite exciting for October time. We hope that that's going to be in a physical environment, and we hope that that's going to be a celebration of everything we've been able to achieve with the support of people like yourself, Peter, as well, and all the wonderful mentees and mentors and all of our supporters and advocates that have helped us, as well as bringing on board lots of new partnerships that can help us take it further.
Well, congratulations to you guys, because you've done a hell of a lot of work over the last 5 years, and particularly through the tough times of these last 2 years. Let's hope more people in the industry listen to this and listen to you guys as well, and come and support you. So thank you all very much for your time today, because it's a busy day. So Anne, Emma, Holly, thank you all very much, and hope to see you soon. Well, thank you so much to Anne, Emma and Holly. The Peach Podcast is always free to listen to, and to find out, search Peach 2020, the top table on Apple Podcasts, Spotify, Google Podcasts, Amazon Music, or any app that supports podcasts. All of our podcasts will be uploaded to our YouTube channel as well, and you can access them through our website. So don't forget to like, rate and subscribe to make sure you don't miss out on future episodes.
Podcast from Peach 2020, hosted by Peter Martin.